Hey, Paul here. I'd like to thank our premier sponsor for this episode, Cisco Systems, building a bridge to possible in their newest platform to power an inclusive future for all. For more information, go to cisco.com. Hi, welcome to Business Brains and the Bottom Line. I'm your host, Paul Delegro, and my guest today is Bibi Onsori, the anxiety coach. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Well, when you and I first came in contact with each other, I have to admit the anxiety coach title really caught me because it's something I think everyone struggles with.
Yes,
right?
For sure.
I don't care who you are. I don't care how confident you may seem or how secure you may. Everyone has a little bit of anxiety in their life, and everyone struggles with it. And so when I saw it, I'm like, wow, that would be a great topic to share with my listeners. So, you're an anxiety coach. What does an anxiety coach do? Let's just get right down to the basics to start with. Then we can kind of go from there.
Well, I'm really glad that, you're interested to pick up this topic because, like you said, it's such a big topic. And I find that there's still a lot of stigma around having anxiety in the world, especially in the professional world. So as an anxiety coach, what I do, I just focus on people's mental health and anxiety. That's all I work around, and help them, if they're having crippling anxiety or just anxieties that's kind of making them stand in their own way in life. I really help them get to the root cause of it and help them heal their anxiety so they can live like a free life without having this problem all day, every day with them.
Yeah, I can see how it can be debilitating. I think and it ties into depression too, I'm sure, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yes,
they
big
probably go
time.
hand in hand because that's the one thing I've always heard about me. I mean, I think we've all had down days, right?
Yeah.
But some people get so depressed that they can't even get up out of bed in the morning, right?
Yeah.
That's to the extreme, right? So it all ties together. So, yeah, I mean, a simple example, me even with this creating this podcast, I got to admit, the first few shows I did, I lost some sleep the night before. I got to admit it,
Yeah.
little anxiety there. Again, not to the point where it's debilitating for me, but at least
Yes.
I recognized it. So how did you get into being an anxiety coach? I mean, you didn't just get up yesterday and say, I'm going to do this, right? What was the genesis of this?
So I was an interior designer for maybe 15 or 16 years, but I had really bad anxiety. So I had 10 years of crippling anxiety. So my anxiety was around the phobia of getting cancer. So I was always in
Oh,
panic that
wow.
I'm going to get cancer. I just go to the doctor. I'd memorize all the symptoms online. So when I'd actually go to the doctor, they were like, "Oh, you're a doctor?" And I'm like, "Nope, I'm a carcinophobic here."
Yeah, you're like a doctor's worst nightmare, because
It's
Mr.
100%,
Yeah, Mr.
100%.
Google comes into play, and we self-diagnose, and then we go to the doctors and tell them what's wrong with us, right?
Exactly. And that was my life. And it was like that for 10 years, and it was really bad. And I remember I lived in so much fear that I just thought, my life was all fear based. And though I
Right.
had an amazing job, I was traveling the world. I lived in Italy, I worked in London, I was in Vancouver. So I had a great life and a great career, but it's like I felt like I'm not living because I was always living in fear. And so I remember I was always going to different therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists. Um, and, no one could really help me truly heal my anxiety. And, it was when I found there was a time in my life that I had so much fear that I thought, okay, I'm actually dead. Like I'm not really living, right? So I
Yeah,
just
no,
thought,
I understand what you're saying. That makes
yeah.
sense.
And I
Yeah.
thought, I'm never in the moment. I'm always in fear of getting this disease. And I remember I thought one night to myself, I thought, well, it's actually, what are my options here? Because I am living like I'm dead. So either I have two choices. Like one is to kill myself, which I'm like that. And the other one was to get healing, right? To go after healing, but really go after it and just not give up on it. And knowing myself, I'm not the kind of person who would take my own life. I'm like, I will do everything I
Yeah.
can to fix this, because I wasn't born with anxiety. I don't think any of us are, right?
Right.
I truly believe we're all born empty and meaningless, as in we're in like a blank canvas. And then through life and trauma and experiences, we make decisions, pick things up. And then, so I really committed myself to healing. And then I found a coach who really knew what she's doing with anxiety, and she worked totally different. She went really to the root cause of what is even causing this anxiety. Why is it even there? Where did you pick it up? What happened? And so working with her, she totally changed my life. And that was the pivotal moment for me that my purpose changed. I thought, this is what she did for me. She gave me my life back, right? And I thought, this is what I need to do and what I want to do for people out there now. So I started training, I took courses, I got my practitioner's license. I did it all to be able to now help people heal.
And you've been doing this now for what, 2 years?
So, yeah, I've been doing it for a few years. I've been doing it for 5 years, kind of on the side, but it's 2 years that I've left the corporate world and just fully committed to it.
And I mean, like I said, we connected on LinkedIn, and I see you do a lot of promoting on LinkedIn. How's it going for you? I got to believe there's a big market out there for you, right?
Yeah, there is a big market, but it's going really well. I'm so grateful that I can do what I love every day and wake up and, go after really changing lives. Still, there's a lot of stigma. Still, there's a lot of people who have a hard time admitting that they have anxiety, a lot of people that are afraid to talk about it. So, personally, I want to help as many people as I can, but, I try my best. I can't help everyone, but
Yeah.
one person at a time.
Yeah, no, and you touched on a good point. I've got the feeling that taking that first step is always the hardest step for people, especially,
Yes.
I think being a man, we're supposed to be rough and tough, right? And you don't want to admit you have any warts or blemishes, or, that you're feeling these anxieties. So it's unmasculine, quote unquote, to admit it. But I think that's changing though. No,
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, I always had a lot of respect for men, but I have a completely other level of respect for men now because, exactly like you said, before it was all about men have to be strong and they have to be like the tough guy and nothing can be wrong. And 90% of my clients are men,
really?
which is amazing because now it's so interesting. The women have kind of become how men used to be like, I'm fine, I've got it,
I can't show any emotion.
yeah, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
changing. Now the men,
Wow.
and it's like, oh, I have so much more respect for men now. I'm like, it's beautiful to see men be open and want to heal and be vulnerable.
Yeah, interesting. I think you're right. Now that you mention it, it actually makes sense, right? Women are wanting to become up on the same par as men, which they should be, but they're trying
Hmm.
to take on the male traits. So we're kind of, maybe we're done with all that stuff, right? As males, we're
Yeah,
like,
for sure. I feel
we're
like it's rotating a little bit at this time. I don't know how it's gonna unfold, but at this time, for sure, I have a lot of men putting their hand up and admitting what's going on.
So what would be, and certainly, we in a half hour here, we can't cover everything, but what would be like the typical scenario of most people what's their biggest fears? What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, so I think social anxiety is huge. Fear of judgment. Another big one that I deal with a lot of clients is the fear of saying no, which,
Really?
I never thought it was such a big problem, but a lot of people have the fear of saying no. And then there's the phobia. So I work with a lot of people that have the phobia of getting sick. So they had my past. I mean, mine was cancer specific, but a lot of people that I work with, they have the phobia of getting disease and getting ill. Then there's people that I work with have the phobia of dogs. They have the phobia of people.
Sure.
Um, those can be
Crowds,
well.
right? A lot of, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. It's funny. As you're saying, I'm trying to relate stuff to my own personal life. I remember just the simple story. My brother had a heart attack a few years ago,
Mm.
and all of a sudden I started feeling chest pains afterwards. And my wife's like, "It's all in your head." And I'm like, I'm sitting there going, I'm feeling something. I had to go to the doctors. I went for a CAT scan. I went for a stress test, and the doctor just laughed at me. He's like, "You're fine."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but I
Oh,
had
I've
that
been there.
anxiety of like, oh my God,
Yeah.
my brother had a heart attack, so I'm going to have a heart attack. And, uh, but I had to go get it taken care of myself.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with fears. Fears are so the fear is only ours, right? It's not really happening out here. It's what's happening in here. But for the person experiencing it, it is very real. So
Oh
you
yeah.
cannot discount someone's feelings on that.
Yeah, because to the outside world, it seems very unnatural. Like you said, a fear of a crowd or fear of anxiety of anything, right? And we look at it and scoff at it, but to that person, it has
Yeah.
to be
And
real.
if you're not, for a lot of people, if you're not bleeding, it's like, oh, what, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you, you know? But it's like, no, there's a lot wrong with going on inside of me. Just because I'm bleeding doesn't mean I'm fine.
Yeah, and I think I read some of I listened to some of your videos, and one of the things you mentioned was of how this limits us in our life. Like it stops us from progressing and going forward, getting that job I want, or getting that whatever in life,
Yeah.
the athletics or academics or the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. I believe if you do not have a healthy mindset, you cannot be living your best life. It's just not possible
Yeah,
because it leaks into all areas of your life.
yeah, no doubt about it. So you know, outside of just, the obvious ones, what are some of the longer term effects of anxiety? Like we understand the short term ones we've been talking about. What about long term? If someone doesn't get help, what's the impact?
Well, there's panic attacks, there's anxiety attacks. It's just going to keep building up. There's for sure an intense amount of depression. And then if you just continue to live in that, you're in hideout, you're not going out, you're depressed, you're always staying home, then you're getting super unhealthy. Then again, this is the part you could really start to get sick because I always say, think about it. If that's what you're doing, if that's what's happening to the mind and that's what you're making yourself feel like anxiety, what is it actually doing to your cells? Right?
Right.
If
I
if
got to
I
I
could go in that panic, what am I actually doing to my organs?
I was going to say it's got to lower your immune system, the
Oh,
stress in your
everything.
body, right?
Yeah, everything. It's so interesting. The way we think is the way we feel, right? So if you're constantly living in fear, where it won't take long for you to really tap into illnesses. And the very bottom is obviously, which is so heartbreaking, is suicide, because people just rather be dead than feel this
The,
pain anymore, right?
yeah, the demons inside have to be
Yeah.
pretty bad for you to take your own life.
But it's like, it's with all of it, it's like the only first step is to take action, to talk to someone,
Yeah.
and everything can change.
Yeah. So getting back to your own personal story, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah, of
where
course.
did the cancer fear and anxiety come in? How did that originate? If you don't mind me asking, I mean,
No, 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 not at all. So I think for me, it was when we got to the root of my anxiety, it was more about, due to my childhood events, I had got an obsession to protect my body. And then when I was young, I was around 13 or 14. Um, at the same time, cancer was starting to be, it was starting to happen more and more often, right? It wasn't like rare when it was before. It
right,
was rare once you heard someone got cancer, they're like, oh my god, someone got cancer. Now it's like the common cold, you know what I mean?
right.
And so when I was 13, one of my family members got cancer, and just everything shifted, like her appearance, her energy, and she was like bubbly, outgoing, and everything shifted. And so I already had this obsession to protect my body. Then I saw her and what cancer did to her, and I put the two together. And I was like, okay, great. I have to now have this phobia because this disease is going to harm my body. Right. And so that my obsession started there.
And it just consumed you for, you said, like 10 years.
Oh, it was the worst. It was the worst thing ever.
But you were this functioning person though, right? I mean, you said you were working in Italy and London and you had these
Yeah, I was, but
great
I was
career.
like, it was so interesting because in general, I'm a very strong person, right? And I always have been. But and I was so strong, and I was but also so bad that I was so used to my anxiety that I would actually have silent anxiety attacks. So you could be at a party and talking to me, and I would be having a whole full on panic within, but I could have hold a conversation with you, which is
Really?
even worse, which is even scarier.
Well, that's
And you couldn't even tell.
that's talent right there.
It's pretty, but that's pretty bad because that's what we do. That's how bad we can really numb ourselves out to our anxiety. That's the scary part.
Yeah. And I think it gets to a point where it becomes the norm, right? I would think that,
Yeah, and that's
unfortunately.
right, and that's what really breaks my heart. Sometimes I talk to people and they go, "Oh, my mom had it, so I have it. It's genetic." And I'm like, "I don't think it's genetic. I think you were raised in that house, and as children, we're like sponges. If we see our
Yeah.
moms always frantic, we learn to be frantic, for example.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, actually. Now that you mentioned this, where someone says, "Well, my mother had it, my sister had it, so therefore that's
It's
the reason why
passed
I have it."
down to me."
Right, genetically.
No, no. My true belief, I mean, and I'm sure maybe other coaches or therapists or everyone might think differently, but my true belief and what worked for me and what works for my client is there is a root cause to your anxiety. There's always a root cause.
Yeah. So you had mentioned, we talked earlier, obviously before the show. You had mentioned that you're anxiety free right now.
Yes, I haven't had any anxiety, zero, for 5 years now. Knock
So
on wood.
explain to me no anxiety, because we all get a little hyped up over certain things. So when you say no anxiety, what does that mean to you?
So obviously there's the fight or flight. Like if I'm going hiking and a bear approaches me, I'm not going to be like, "Oh, I'm anxiety free. Like this is cool." It's all good.
It's a good
No.
example. Yeah.
Yeah, like if I have to go speak on stage, I don't like it. So I will feel
Okay.
something, like the fight or flight normal amount.
Yep.
But if you think like if I have the daily amount of anxiety, no, I don't have any phobia about getting cancer anymore. I don't worry about that. It's not on my mind. But also I think, bad things have for sure happened to me in my life the past 5 years, really
Right.
bad things. But did I take on anxiety with it? No, zero. But I've created a very strong mindset now. I do
Okay.
mindset work. Like just like a person goes to the gym, I literally take my brain to the gym daily. You know, I make sure I journal, I read well, I meditate 10 minutes a day. I really put time to take care of my mind. So I have a very strong mindset now, and anyone can have this. It's not like there's something special about me. You just have to do the work. It's like when you go to the gym, you start getting toned after a while. Well, why? Because you're eating better and you're going to the gym, 4 times a week. You're committing yourself to that.
Right.
It's the same with the mind. If you do the practices, if you do the work, you can really be in the place that I am, that really bad things can happen, but nothing can really phase you.
So I'm assuming those would be some of the techniques that you would teach to your
In my
clients.
program, for sure. In my program, but I also think, if someone doesn't have the kind of anxiety that they need to take my program, I think even the healthy mental, like a healthy person in the mind who's not battling with anything as like anxiety or depression still needs to do the work.
Right.
And that's the problem. People who don't have anxiety, they're not forced to really go down the path of doing the mental work because they're fine, right? But even those people should, because it'll just take you to a whole other level in life.
And reach that fulfillment that we're all striving for, right?
Right, just like the peace of mind, it's true, it's possible, you can get there. I mean, if I could get there and I had like the worst anxiety, I can't even tell you how bad my anxiety was. So if I can sit here today and say that it's possible, I truly promise anyone can do it.
So how do you feel about, say, for instance, the getting over fears and like, for instance, everyone says that one of the people's biggest fears is public speaking,
Yes.
right? But I've done it several times, and I'm always nervous as hell when before I do it. Then when I do it, I'm like, oh, that wasn't so bad. So
Right.
is it throwing yourself into it? Is that part of the answer sometimes?
I don't
No.
know about that. Like, I think maybe not with anxiety. If it's anxiety involved, I mean, public speaking and speaking on stage, there's different levels. Like, if, I think I'm pretty strong in my mind, but if you tell me to go publicly speak, I feel a little bit like, I don't know. I just feel uncomfortable on
Sure.
stage, like all eyes on me. But I
Yep.
would do it, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be like, oh my god, I'm gonna faint. Someone bring me water. I'm dying. I'd get through it. But then you have the kind of person who's like, they have fear of judgment. You can't put them on stage. You can't say go on stage. They'll faint. You know
Yeah.
what I
They'll
mean?
freeze probably.
Yeah, well, they'll pass out because imagine it's like their true fear and phobia. They can't
Yeah.
stand in front of 10 people because their mind just goes all over the place. So with something like what me and you could experience, yes, we'd go on stage and get it done and we'd walk off and be like, I did pretty good. That was kind of fun actually, right?
Yeah.
But with someone like that, you can't tell them to go on stage. Like they have to do the work first on where's that fear of judgment coming from, you know? Get through that. Like I have a client right now that she has a really bad phobia of dogs. Well, I didn't tell her to go to the dog park day one and like just go face it. She has a
Yes.
really bad phobia of dogs, right?
Yeah, go up
So
to a
we're
pit bull and see if he bites you.
yeah, exactly. Go near one. But I'm like,
Yeah.
we've done, she's like in the 6th week of my program and we've done the work and she's gone out to parks now. She feels fine. If the dog's on a leash, she feels better. But the other day she walked by like 4 big dogs and she's like, I was totally fine. But it took us 6 weeks, right? For her to now go to the outside world and give it a shot.
That's great. So that was actually one of my questions was like,
Yeah.
how long is your program? And I know it's probably a function of how severe someone's anxiety
No,
is,
my
but
program is 8 weeks. It's
okay.
8 weeks. Yeah. My program is 8 weeks long. And, sometimes if I'm on a consultation call with someone and I see the problem is deeper, it could be more, then I will say 10 weeks to some people. But usually my clients are, by the time of 8 weeks, their anxiety is gone.
That's awesome. I think you're the first anxiety coach I've ever
Yeah,
come
everybody
across.
tells me that. I'm like,
Well,
I don't want to say I'm a life coach or this coach. Like, I just want to focus on anxiety. That's it.
yeah, no, you found your niche, right? And you said it's your passion. It's like I have 3 daughters, and I've told them from the time they were little, don't chase money, chase your passions. What you love to do, it'll get you up out of bed every day. And so far, knock on wood, they're doing that.
Yeah, it's so important,
Yeah.
especially I think I had the job, which was my previous passion, and I earned the money and I traveled the world and I was really successful in my job. But then after I had this experience, I'm like, no, 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 this is like my purpose now. This is why I'm here.
Yeah. And I would think that in this day and age, with the whole COVID thing and the election just being over and, uh, the economy and so much uncertainty going on, I got to believe, you have a fair amount of clients right now, or at least people stepping up to be clients.
Yeah, it's good. I'm busy and I don't usually take more than 5 to 6 clients a month, anyways, because my program is very heavy. It's very hard work. And my program is fully customized, because everyone walks in with a different type of anxiety. So I literally customize every little bit of my program for that person. So it's heavy, heavy work. But yeah, it's good. I mean, I'm always hoping that I can help more people. And for me, it's really not about the money, And I say this to people and they're like, but it's a business. I'm like, no, I don't care because money will come.
Yeah.
But you've got to be purpose driven. The mission is got to be right. It's got to be right in your heart what you're doing, And for me, truly more than anything is to help people live a good life. And the money will come. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. It's kind of the advice I've given my daughters too, is just don't worry. Don't worry about it
No.
at the beginning. Just if you love what you do, think about if you love what you do every day and get up and go to work, it's not work.
Exactly. For me, Mondays are like, who can I help heal? Who can I help get their life back? That's really what I wake up to.
Okay. So if you had to, obviously we're not going to be able to, and I don't want to give any trade secrets away today,
There are no
but
secrets. It's just work.
yeah, I mean, what are some simple things people can do on a daily basis to help themselves? I mean, I know it's such an open-ended question, but just simple things.
Yeah, I think my biggest advice would be, if your fear is, for example, my fear was around cancer. I
Right.
don't watch any of these still to date. I don't watch these movies on cancer. Like the girl gets
Yeah.
brain tumor. It's not, I can't, I don't
Yeah.
even want to like tickle the idea of that. So I just stay away from it. If I'm watching TV and I see a commercial come up, oh, go get this type of cancer. If you don't, you're going to get this. Mute. Like I just mute it,
Yeah.
So if you know what your fear is, don't go for it. Like don't go around it. Don't put yourself in that situation all the time, If you can avoid it, obviously if you have like a phobia of people, you need to get some professional help,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
people
It
are
makes
ever, you can't
sense.
avoid them. But something like if you have these kind of phobias like mine, mute the TV, change the channel, like don't put yourself in that situation. Then another big thing, which is so simple, but so many of my clients, they just drink so much coffee and they're like, I have anxiety. Coffee is like the worst thing ever for anxiety. And I don't say when people, yes,
Guilty.
it's so bad.
I drink probably about 8 cups a day.
Yeah, right. And coffee already makes you jittery and like
Yeah.
buzzed and like, oh, and then imagine you have anxiety on top, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, no. And then I also talk about, which was, I'll put out a video this week about it. Actually, it was one of the biggest things for me was so much focus on what I don't want. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to do chemo. I don't want to die. And then it was like, why don't I focus on what I do want? Right? I wanted health. So instead of constantly doing that, I started studying nutrition. I started learning everything about the human body, you know? So focus on what you do want rather than what you don't want.
Yeah, I think too many people, like, being in the sales profession, one of the biggest ones for sales guys, I can tell you this right now, is always fear of failure, right?
Yes, for sure.
And that can be debilitating as well, if I can trust me on that one.
Yeah, I have many clients with that fear as well.
Yeah. So
Many.
it's just so unhealthy. And you try to be logical in your mind about it. Like, okay, the sun's going to come up tomorrow. My family's still going to love me.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling this way?
Well, and I don't believe in failure. I think it's always a
Yeah.
lesson, you know?
Yeah.
There's always a lesson. Every time you failed, you learned a really good lesson. And those lessons you can't go buy. They only
Right.
come with experience, right?
Yeah. It's funny. And I think part of it comes, you said experience. Yeah, as we get older, you tend to be a little bit, I would think, you're more poised and be able to handle situations a little bit better because you've experienced it. And then you say to yourself, okay, that wasn't so bad. I'm going to get through this. And you do, right? You always do.
Yeah.
It's
And I think it's a different type of people too. Some people, as more things happen in their life, they're like, okay, that happened. I learned from it. Let me grow from it. And then you have the people who really hold on to every single thing or negative thing that has happened in their life. And now they can't let it go,
Right.
and now here they're like 52 and they just have so much baggage, so much they're holding to. And then they're like, why do I have anxiety? It's like, well, let's look, you're carrying too much. You
Yeah.
got to let go of some of that baggage, right?
Yeah, I've always respected people that always, and maybe on the inside they're different, but on the outside they always seem to not have a care in the world and always happy-go-lucky. And I always love people like that.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think
Well,
I'm a
even
little bit
those
like that.
people,
Yeah.
they are a lot of time it's I don't want to say it's a mask, but a lot of time there's actually a lot going on, but that's actually the way they protect themselves, that's the way they band-aid. We all have issues. Like, it's
Right.
not like you had a bad childhood, you have an issue, or you're something wrong with you.
I'm going to blame my parents today, by the way, just so you know.
Right. Well, we all do, right?
Right. That seems to be
because of this. Yeah, we all do, right?
That seems to be the go-to, right? I blame my
For
father.
sure. For sure. Every single person that I know in my life and in my clients have something against their parents. I even have a client who his mom loved him so much and gave him so much attention. Now he has social anxiety and he still blames her.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
He has social anxiety because she was giving him so much love and care, and people in the world, well, they're not going to like give him the same amount of attention and love as his mom. Like, that's your mom. So he's expecting that from people, but people are not giving that back to him. So now he has social anxiety because he never thinks he's enough.
Wow.
So even that mom did something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
In his eyes, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's what it always comes down to.
Unbelievable. Wow. Well, this has been great. Like I said, I think this topic is so relevant today. I guess it always has been relevant, but more so
Yes,
now with
always.
social media. I mean, and again, as we're doing this, I'm trying to relate it to my own life. Just like even when I started this podcast, I remember when I hit the publish button for the first time, I'm sitting there like this going,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what are people going to think? What are they going to think of me? And, the woman who's helping me do this, Sia from Innovation Media, she would call me and like give me the kick in the butt that I needed and say, you can do this. and I got to admit, she was a big part of why. But after I did a few episodes, I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. Now, I'm not Joe Rogan yet. I only have 160 million more followers to catch him, but I'll get there maybe someday, So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think, for me too, there's so many other coaches that are so successful, so well known. But for me, really, my mission is if I can change even one life, I think I've done a pretty good job,
yeah,
right? And same with the podcast. I had a client who I was on another podcast, and he said he couldn't sleep at night. So he was on LinkedIn. Then he saw the link to this podcast, heard me, and he was like, he has a lot of anxiety. So he heard that I had anxiety, and I shared my story on the podcast. And the next day he was like, I want to hear more. So then he
yeah,
reached out to me, and then he became my client. But I'm like, it's amazing. It's so powerful that as someone who has a podcast, you could be sleeping, but the work is still happening. It's
yeah,
still going on. And I was sleeping, but here I'm saving someone,
right. Yeah,
right? So
because
that's the beauty of it.
the content is out there 24/7.
Yeah, and you don't know whose life you're changing,
That's
right?
right.
Maybe it's not
Yeah,
tangible. You can't touch it. Oh, that I like changed Jessica
yeah,
Clark's life. But you're changing life, and that's what matters.
yeah. So it sounds like you had some criteria, some objectives when you started this, and I guess we all do, right? Same with me with this podcast. I had certain things I wanted to accomplish, and I wanted it to be fun. I wanted it to be informative. I wanted to cover different subjects, and I think I'm doing that. So far, having fun with this, and having
Yeah.
having guests like you on it is what makes it. Because that was actually one of the things I thought about when I started this. Was I didn't want it just to be the Paul Delegro show, right? I wanted to have great, interesting guests and subject matters on. And this was absolutely, I think when I told a few people that I was having you on, everyone perked up like, oh, wow. Because you
Oh,
can tell.
it's such an honor. I mean, the more that I can just share and say, I had anxiety, it's okay to have it. It's normal to have it, but just take the first step. Just the more I can spread that word, it means everything to me.
Yeah. So obviously people are going to be listening and watching. If someone needs some help, how do they get a hold of you?
So they can go on my website. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's my platform. But if you don't have LinkedIn, you can always go to my website, which is theinnerroommate.com.
Okay.
And you can contact me on there. I always just do a 15-minute free consultation. And then if I see, I can help this person, it's a suit for me and I'm a suit for them, then I move on to a 1 hour free consultation again to just get to the 15-minute is kind of like the tip of the iceberg. And then the
Sure.
1 hour call is just getting to the nitty gritty and see what's really going on. So yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Bibi. I've really enjoyed this.
Oh, it's
It
been
was,
such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
oh, you're quite welcome. And, maybe we'll have you on again sometime. You never know,
Yes, I would
right?
love that.
I
would
think
love
we
that.
could go on for hours on this subject because,
I agree.
but we don't, we can't go on forever. So yeah,
Yes.
we'll end it at that.
Well, it
So
was great. Thank you so much.
yeah. And now that we're connected on LinkedIn and we're friends now, I guess, right?
Yeah, you bet.
So great. Well, hey, that's a wrap for Business Brains on the Bottom Line. Until next time.